As an artist, you have so many great ideas, but maybe too many? It's hard to keep up with all your project ideas and inspirations, and it even becomes defeating and exhausting, doesn't it? So how do you do this better? Welcome to the Art Mentor. My name is Sean, and today I want to give you a framework that I've learned on how to stay happy and creative while at the same time not feeling defeated and exhausted and anxious about everything that you're not doing. And here's how you do this. Now, it's really fundamental that you know that your main problem right now is that you need an exorcism. So did you know that you're actually haunted right now? Yes, you are literally haunted by the specter of your own creativity. And what it is doing is it is ever present and it's ever invading your mind, and it always comes when you least expect it, and it is always pouring copious amounts of just ideas and inspirations, and it just sometimes feels like it's just defeating and demoralizing, doesn't it? Because while you're working on one thing, the next idea for the next thing comes up at the same time, and then inevitably, you want to jump ship from here to there, and you want to bounce from here to this one, and you want to stop doing this project and do that project, but then you also feel regret for not finishing up the one that you're currently working on. Does this relate to you, friend? Well, look, this is a totally natural phenomena. It's nothing to be concerned about, but it is literally just the life of being a creative, okay? And this is called creative confusion, and it is completely natural. It took me a long time to figure out and not shame myself for this too. And if you're feeling this way, like, let me just set you up for this. There is no point in putting any of your mental energy towards feeling any type of guilt for not accomplishing the things that you are currently not doing right now, nor does it have any purpose for you to feel guilt over you not finishing the things that you're currently working on. But it is your responsibility, though, friend, to kind of rein in your creative confusion and to harness it and control it so that you can actually do more things with it rather than just feel bad about it. Because if you let this haunting completely envelop you, then what's going to happen is it will assume control of you, and it's just going to set you up for misery, my friend. So you do need to know that this is a totally natural thing. It's okay. It happens to all creatives, but everybody, here's how you're going to take control of it, and here's your exorcism plan. At the crux of being a creative person is one guiding philosophy that I have discovered, and I've definitely mentored and encouraged so many other artists just like you watching this to do, and it's going to change your life when you do it, friend. And here's simply what it is. When you get new ideas, as you're accumulating better and better and better ones, and you think of new characters and new locations and new IPs that you want to do, the most worthwhile thing for you as an artist is to learn how to not indulge yourself into every single little idea that you have, because every idea that you have sounds amazing at the outset. You get hit with that blind optimism. You get hit with those waves of enthusiasm for it, right? But then inevitably, you're just gonna set yourself up for misery every single time that you just kind of toe dip into the waters of your artistic potential. Instead of you doing that, friend, I want you to just cannonball into it, okay? Commit to your ideas. Commit to finishing more ideas. Maybe not every idea, I get that. But what if you committed to the vast majority of ideas that you have right now? What if you invested into that? What if you stopped feeling bad about everything that you're not doing, and instead you felt great about everything that you did do? Even if it's not turning out how you want it to, let me tell you this, you're gonna get so much more out of you finishing something than you just working to the edge of what you feel comfortable with or what you're interested in. Because just to be real with you, you're gonna lose interest in your artwork. It's just like being in a marriage, y'all, okay? You're gonna have highs and lows. You're gonna have great seasons and you're gonna have less than optimal seasons, okay? But the way that you stick with it, the way that you experience success is you remember why you got into it in the first place. You remember what you fell in love with and who you fell in love with, and you work through everything that's going to come up. And why do I recommend this? Because you're actually not even committing to your artwork. You're committing to yourself. You're committing to your future. You're committing to your potential. And most importantly, y'all, you're gonna see this as not an act of selfishness, not an act of torture, not an act of labor, but an act of self-love. Because in you committing to yourself and committing to each idea that you have, you are growing your respect and you're growing your trustworthiness. Because a lot of times what we do is we actually don't trust ourselves. We trained ourselves to not have faith in our efforts, to not have faith in our outcomes. And if you want to make it as an artist, if you want to do better than what you're currently doing, Recognize that that's not going to come from you looking for the best idea. It's from you making the best out of every idea that you have as many times as possible. Are there going to be flops? Absolutely, I can guarantee it. That pain is inevitable, but how much you suffer through it is going to be completely dependent on you, my friend. By investing into your projects that you are working on to the best level that you're able to do, and then working on it just a little bit more each time, you are going to be actually not investing into making better artwork, but investing into your future. How's that sound? Now, I bet that you totally love your creativity, don't you? And that's one thing that I've always embraced about myself. But then I also realized this a while ago, that a lot of artists actually really like to overwhelm themselves. And this definitely comes from a good place, to be honest. Like, we love to come up with new ideas. Like, we're working on a big, awesome project, you're working on your comic, and then boom, oh, I've got a new OC. I'm gonna put them into a new comic. And then I would also come up with this idea for like a game that I would want to develop. And I would be like, ooh, maybe I want to get into commissions. And then I would just feel like I was juggling too many balls. Does this feel like you? Oftentimes, I notice this symptom of creatives is that we actually really like this sense of overwhelming ourselves. And this is actually something that we train ourselves to do, because oftentimes we are able to train our brains into negative thought processes that really don't serve us well. Have you ever heard of this before? Because it's nothing really anybody talks about enough. By wiring yourself for stress and negativity, what you actually do is you condition yourself to feel bad about yourself and not better about yourself, because you always think that what you're doing right now is not good enough, and therefore you look for what could be better. While this comes from a good place, you're actually conditioning yourself to just not be satisfied with yourself. And I kind of realized later in my life that that's a really toxic mindset. And I used to feel really bad about what I wasn't doing. And then I kind of hooked myself into this idea and this philosophy. So in this realm of thought, here's why, is that when you are going through any type of stressful situation, your brain releases certain hormones. And then, just like if you were addicted to sleeping pills or caffeine or anything like that, your brain can actually become chemically addicted to those same exact hormones. Now, this all relates back to your artwork, just to land this plane, because when you get to stressful points in your artwork, this might be when you're typically getting your best ideas. Is this you? Like, do you start to feel dissatisfied with your artwork, or you're overwhelmed, you just are lost, you don't know what to do, right? Is that when you get your new idea? Well, then right there, that's something that you want to think about, okay? One of the things that I would recommend that you do, friend, too, on this note is think about this. Where are your ideas coming from? Are they coming from a state of stress? Are they coming from a state of peace? Because nowadays, for me, most of my best ideas come from when there's just nothing going on, like when there's complete silence. And if you want to rewire your brain into thinking about this and actually having time to ruminate on this, one of the things I'd recommend you do is definitely force yourself to have more times of boredom. Like, we really villainize boredom so much nowadays in like our complete stimulus junkie mindsets. And it's one of the things I'm gonna recommend you do more often. Like, for me, I love just a completely silent car ride home from work. Literally just 30 minutes to an hour of just nothing at all but your thoughts. Sounds torturous to most people, but I promise you this, it's gonna help you really clear your thoughts and give you new perspectives. So if your ideas are only coming from a state of negativity, then you actually don't wanna do a new project. You just think that that's gonna somehow alleviate your current stress. Well, in actuality, it's just gonna create new stress for you. You ever thought of it like that? And hey, if you are wanting to try something new, let me give you this advice too. Why don't you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button so that you get loads of informative and motivational content just like this. I want to teach you how to be a better artist. And I see that like 60% of you come back every single week to watch my videos, but y'all forget to hit those two buttons. So come on, what are you waiting for? And hey, if this is helping you, please share this with somebody that you know, because this is going to be a game changer for you too. Now, when you've got too many art ideas, have you ever noticed that it's just like binge eating? And what do you do in that instance? Then you're just gonna take it as much as you can, as much as you can, as much as you can. And if you or somebody that you know struggles with this, or you're at least aware of it, you know what I'm talking about. It's not even about enjoying it. It's all about just consumption and seeing the quantities that you can make. And in the same way, What this is going to produce for you, just like binge eating, is it's going to produce a really volatile effect where you're just going to produce lots of visual vomit because you've just got too many ideas to go through. And this is when people usually get a little pissy with me and they'll be like, well, Sean, I can have lots of interests and I can do lots of things. Yes, you can, friend. I'm absolutely not going to take that away from you, my friend. However, though, what are you doing and what do you focus on, all right? Rather than you being overwhelmed because you just got all of this stuff in your head and you've got this project and this game and that comic and these characters and then those commissions on top of all that, right? And then your professional work too. Instead of all that, what can you do? Because at the moment right now, you don't have pride in what you do. What you have is just visual vomit. You got a little bit of this mixed in with that, and it comes up like this. So to curb this, my friend, here's my suggestion for you. And it's gonna sound rough, but it's really gonna make your life so much better. Instead of you trying to nurture all of those ideas with the exact same force, do it one at a time. Okay? Do it one at a time. Just pick one thing. A lot of times we get really overwhelmed and we get anxious, not because of the act of actual art making, but because of our thought of the act of it. And this ties into as well when you have just too many ideas, because you have eyes that are way too big for your artistic stomach. You're trying to do too much and you're trying to take in this and take in that and do this and do that. And my friend, all that's gonna lead to is artistic confusion. And I don't want that for you, friend. So many times do I work with people in my mentorship that they tell me, well, Sean, I've got so many great ideas. And I'm like, okay, great. Which one would you like to do right now? Now, that doesn't mean that you're just gonna discard all the other ones forever. But hey, look, can we work on this one right now? So you tell me what it is. What is it that you're currently working on right now that you're also feeling invaded by all these other ideas? A reality of being an artist is that you're inevitably going to be blessed by the muse of creativity so much. Unfortunately, though, you're not going to be able to do every single thing that comes up in your mind. So therefore, it is always best for you to accomplish some things rather than nothing. And more importantly too, you're going to do that one thing exquisitely rather than having a whole lot of mediocre, incomplete, and dissatisfactory pieces across the board. Because the last thing I want you to do is to literally vomit when you take a look at your work. Make sure that you adjust your eyes, y'all. So y'all like me, where you have loads of just incomplete sketchbooks, or you have loads of just different materials all over the place. Maybe one day you just bought yourself a big awesome set of expensive alcohol markers and now they're just collecting dust. Or hey, did you go ahead and buy that program and now you're not even using it? Did you go ahead and purchase that course and you never even really finished it? Or hey, do you have a big folder just full of things that you have absolutely never finished, but you worked on for a little bit here and there? Why is that? And why do creatives tend to have this sort of creative chaos all around them? This just absolute graveyard of things that are completely unfinished. Why is that? And why do your new ideas therefore sound so much more alluring and so much more attractive than what you're working on? It's just because of this. It's way easier than finishing. It is so much easier to start something than it is to finish something, isn't it? This effect is really birthed from basically this process that not many people talk about. So at the beginning of any creative process, you are enveloped in what's called blind optimism. Do you know what this feels like? Like you just go into it and you're just like, yes, this is gonna be the best idea and this is gonna be the best character and this is gonna be the best experience of my life. And therefore you just really wrap yourself into it. And then what happens next? And then you sit down and you start to work on it and you're like, yay, this is coming along great. And then when you get into it, you hit this point of what's called informed pessimism. And this is when now everything that you didn't know at the beginning is now invading you right there, because everything that you didn't think about, you just thought about how exciting it was going to be and not the nuance involved into it. And now you're like, oh God, this just isn't working out for me. And because of that, now you're starting to lose a little interest in it. Now, what was once an extremely attractive idea is now unattractive. Can you relate to this? And then after that, what happens is then you sink into the valley of despair. But I'm gonna ask you to hold off on that. Instead of that, persist a little bit, because then inevitably, the more you work on something, once you hit that valley of despair, once you can't stand it, you're lost, you don't know what to do, then you hit the zone a little bit after of informed optimism. Like you can start to see results, you can start to see where you want to go. In managing your ideas, one thing that I've definitely learned is that it is highly worthwhile for you to commit to an idea before you jump onto the next one. And I've got some tips coming at you soon for how you should definitely stack and manage and organize these ideas. But you need to hang in there even when things don't look well, when they don't look right, when you feel foolish and unoptimistic about it, because you don't know what greatness awaits around the corner if you're always dumping out of everything just because you're not feeling well about it anymore. Don't let your emotional drive override your creative desires. Overall, my friend, if you're giving up too soon, then you're also giving up on your potential too soon. But I bet if you knew that, you wouldn't give up anymore, would you? Now, when creative confusion really sets in, here's one thing that I always notice is when artists are triggered. And why, as an artist, typically when you're feeling overwhelmed with all these brand new ideas and these amazing new concepts that you want to do, it's basically because you've been triggered. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying emotionally, I'm not saying that somebody pissed you off. No, friend, I'm saying that when you're in your current artwork right now, something is happening in there that's making you want to look outside of it. And typically what this is when you've hit the edge of your comfort zone. It's when you've now ceased from it being a comfortable, happy idea into now you're in the realm of just absolute wandering. Like you're kind of scratching your head like, well, what do I do? How do I make this look better? And then frustration sets in and you're like, oh my God, this doesn't look good. And I don't know how to make this better. And nobody's telling me what to do. And I don't know, I don't have these resources that are going to inform me for how to bring this to the level that I want. So that typically is indicative of somebody that has hit the edge of their creative comfort zone. And it's hard to walk outside of that line too. But here's what I'm gonna advise you to do instead is that when you have that, that's kind of a big signal that you should persist. That's a big signal as far as when you should start to look up new resources. That's also a really big signal that maybe you aren't really interested in a new idea, but actually what you've done here is this signifies that you have a new skill level that you want to get to, and that discomfort is causing you to look outside of you. And this is really tough for us to walk in discomfort because especially contemporaneously, like we're so trained to just be pleasure-seeking junkies. Like literally, you can have anything that you want at any time. You want a ride, you can Uber. You want a pizza, you can order it and have it within an hour. If you want something from Amazon, if you're close enough, you can have it that day. So the fact that you are hitting this zone of discomfort really is also the effect of your lack of pleasure. And therefore, what we tend to do is we tend to look for pleasure in small wins. But here's what I want to advise you on, friend, though, is that being an artist is not about quick and easy wins. It's actually about long-term wins. So just because you hit the edge of your comfort zone doesn't mean you should give up, doesn't mean you should go looking elsewhere, because what that actually cues you for is just the fact that you should probably just dig in deeper to what you're currently doing because you're on the cusp of reaching a new level. But if you knew that, I bet you wouldn't go looking elsewhere, would you? Now, the next reason why you might be looking for new projects is because you are an artistic player. That's right, you're trying to play the artistic field and you're trying to broaden all your horizons. You're kind of seeing what you can cast your line and what fishes come up when you reel it back, okay? And this is not uncommon, it's not unusual. But what's at the core of this? You got this thing called shiny object syndrome that's sinking in right there. A lot of the times when you feel like you're suffering from creative confusion or you just have loads and loads of great ideas, it's just because of this. It's no different than somebody who's a chronic dater or a chronic cheater. It's just because you might be a little bit afraid of commitment. Is this you, by the way? Because I totally get where you're coming from on this, okay? Because one of the things that I used to do is just jump around from so many different IPs and so many different concepts, and then I would create a new character and a new character and a new character, and then I would never finish the other three and just keep on jumping on to the next one. And why is that? Because you're always thinking that what you're currently doing is not good enough, and therefore you get, boom, like a raccoon that sees something shiny, they just want to run after it, okay? And you think that that's somehow gonna bring you long-term sustained pleasure, but really you're just looking for a quick dopamine hit and you're looking for that quick win. And to combat this though, you have to recognize this symptom taking place and just ask yourself like, do I just want to do that because it seems like a better, more awesome idea? Or am I doing this to avoid committing to what I'm currently doing? More often than not, it's just a sign of insecurity about what you're doing, and that's okay, friend. So at the core of shiny object syndrome is this. It's far easier for you to be a foolish beginner in a new thing than it is for you to have a foolish looking finished piece. You would much rather be okay with learning a new skill, learning a new concept, taking up a new medium, starting a new character, because it's better for you and it's easier for you to try something new, especially if you're a chronic dabbler. Am I talking to you, by the way? Like you go from like knitting to drawing to painting to sculpting, so on and so forth. It's easier for you to look foolish in the beginning than it is for you to look foolish at the end of what you're currently doing, because that would make you feel bad, but looking foolish when you're starting something new is kind of expected from you, isn't it? You need to look at this as just a sign that you're just feeling a little insecure and you want to ask yourself like, hey, how do I rein this in and how do I actually stick to what I'm doing here? Because oftentimes it's kind of like this, y'all. Do you want to be committed to what you're doing, or do you just want to play the field? Because one of them is going to be long-term happiness and the other one is going to be short-term. Which one do you want, friend? Now, on a more positive note on the spectrum of ideas and concepts and philosophies that are driving you towards looking for new ideas, another reason that you might be assaulted with so many great ideas is actually because you might be a little bit too in love with your ideas. So if you're somebody who, instead of like not liking their ideas, you just love your ideas, like everything you do is just amazing. And then the next idea, oh my God, that's even more amazing. And the next idea, oh my God, that's amazing too. And then you work on it, that's great. And you work on the next one and that's great too. So in doing this though, here's kind of one thing that I wanna let you know about, and it's a really masked and unfortunate circumstance that a lot of creatives do, and I used to do it as well. So oftentimes I've kind of wired myself through my process to have multiple checkpoints, in which case I feel really great. But when I was younger, I actually just used to feel great about everything that I did all the time. And this created a circumstance that I've called happy dance, okay? And this is basically like you create one thing and you're like, yeah, this looks great. And then you create the next thing and you're like, woohoo, that looks great too. And then every step, you're like giving yourself a little pat on the back. That sounds great, right? But I just want to let you know that although we are a super evolved species, we still have weak little chimp brains. And if you're always overwhelmed with just these feelings of like love and appreciation for everything you're doing, that's actually just complacency setting in there, because it's great for you and by all means you should feel prideful about everything you're doing. But if you're always just completely enamored by everything you're doing, then that's honestly you overlooking things that you could do with it. It's natural, my friend, and it's not anything to feel bad about nor feel guilty about, for you to go ahead and take a hard, honest, critical look at yourself and just ask like, okay, that's good, but what can I do better? So this is typically where, again, new ideas will set in, and that might be where you're hitting your complacency edge. And this is when you'll typically say this magical phrase that will definitely cue your artistic death, and you'll say, I like it like that. Okay, in saying I like it like that, you're just saying there's no further potential in this. And there's definitely a difference between saying like, okay, it's done and it's finished. Because most of the time when you're saying you're done, you're actually speaking from an emotional stance rather than from an informed stance. And what I want to warn you on here is that when you are stuck in this mode of happy dance, where you just love everything and you're just masking your complacency, this is when self-destruction will set in for your artistic life and your artistic career too. Because this will be the cue that will cease your artistic innovation. Be careful about that one, my friend. So I bet that one of the number one things that happens to you is that you're working on a project and then you get a great idea for a new project, right? So while you're in the mode of artistic creation and while you're working on that thing that you're really liking, or maybe you're struggling through even, that's typically when your new idea comes up. So what should you do with that? Do you ever just sit back and you just start to ruminate and you just start to smile and then you stroke your chin like that and then you just start to daydream about how amazing that new one's gonna be, right? So instead of you doing that, here's what I'm gonna recommend. Have something next to you while you are creating and write that idea down. One of the worst organization systems in the entire world is your human brain, okay? Like this thing sucks. I'm just gonna be totally honest with you. It is really forgetful, it's inefficient, and anything that you keep up here is going to definitely get forgotten about because you're going to have new things that are prioritized and new things fly up and new things come in all the time that are gonna take a higher priority than what you just thought of. And I get you, you're gonna, while you're creating something, you're gonna think about a new thing. So rather than you having to stop your current creative labors and then ruminate over this potentially new amazing idea, which will probably therefore inevitably repeat the same exact toxic cycle I'm talking about, then write it down, get it out of your head, write just a few words about it, and then come back to it when you don't have anything pressing going on. Maybe when you're sitting in the doctor's office, maybe while you're riding the bus, maybe while you're at a family reunion and you don't want to talk to anybody. Like that's your time to think about that, okay? And this especially works well if you keep it like on your phone, you keep it in a notepad, or if you keep on like a running Google Doc, then like, hey, just when you get an idea, you can be like, aha, okay, let me just write that thing down right there. All of these systems work so that you can just stay in the process and not get interrupted. Because when you're in a really great flow state, when you're really concentrated, the worst thing that you can do is break that, because on average it takes you about 20 minutes to get back into a flow state once you have exited it. So what we want to do is we want to keep you going on what you're doing right now and prepare you for the next thing, but do it more efficiently. Try that out and let me know how it goes. So people that have their own OCs, please listen up. People that have loads of disconnected concepts, this one's for you, because I used to do this as well. I used to make up just loads of different characters and I would create whole lots of people and I would think about their personalities. And this sounds great and it's fun, and by all means you should do this. But what if you could merge them all together? One of the best ways for you to have a lot of ideas, but then kind of make a big thing for them all to be together, is if you put them into a creative project where they all coexist. What I tend to see a lot of artists do who have too many ideas is that there's just no cohesion amongst everything. This can often feel like when you go to a buffet, like there's just too many options and like we like that zone, we don't like this, we don't like that, this doesn't fit in with that, this type of food doesn't pair with that. So think about it in the same way of your characters, okay? Do you want a buffet of different characters? Or how about what if we create a beautiful cornucopia where they all just blend together, where they all exist into? This is something that I've been doing for years, honestly, because like I have my own IP and I have been developing this for a while, and every character that I've existed for like the last few years, I've just been kind of thinking about like, okay, can that be an NPC? Can that be a playable character? Can that be like a side character? Can that be a minor character? Should that be a boss character? Like, think about how everything that you're doing could potentially fit with an entire IP. If you design, you structure an entire project that will envelop all of your characters, or maybe you got just one or two of them, can you condense all those ideas down into fitting under a single umbrella? Because if you can do that, my friend, and you fit it all under a single umbrella, then you won't get drowned out by all the rain of all of the different ideas that are going to completely overwhelm you and sink you into anxiety over everything that you're not doing, in which case you're just going to feel guilty for it, won't you? Try that out. Now, can we talk about the topic of motivation? Y'all, this topic of motivation gets so overhyped, and even the word, oh my God, it's just superfluous nowadays, because most people don't even know what they want to do. Most people don't even know why they're creating. And this kind of confounds itself once we start to look at this in terms of all your project ideas. You're like, oh, well, I lost motivation for this one, and I lost motivation for that one, and oh God, Sean, I just don't have any motivation for art at all. Is this you, my friend? Because if so, I made an entire video for you right here. It's going to teach you actually the truth about motivation, why you don't need any of it. Thanks so much for watching this, and if this helped you, share it with somebody that you know. See you next time.